Hey there, lovely soul. Welcome back to Noah's Stories. Today's story begins on a rainy street where a girl had nothing left and a man had everything but love. The rain tonight wasn't just cold. It was ruthless, unforgiving. Lena Brooks sat curled on the soaked pavement, clutching her worn-out handbag like it held the last thread of her dignity. Her drenched clothes clung to her skin, her brown hair pasted to her cheeks. Her once bright eyes were hollow now, not just tired but lost beyond measure. She had nowhere to go. Her mother had passed away less than 2 months ago, and her uncle, her mother's younger brother, had kicked her out of the only home she had ever known. His words echoed in her head, "I'm not feeding someone who does nothing." Since then, Lena had drifted from place to place, late-night cafes, subway stations, anywhere with a roof. But tonight, every door seemed closed. And so, here she was, in the rain, on the street, alone. A sleek black car rolled to a stop just feet away. Lena didn't even flinch, probably someone parking. But then came the soft click of a door and the sound of footsteps cutting through the rain. Tall, dressed in a white shirt and long coat, his dark hair was slicked back neatly. His cold gray eyes swept over her, not with pity but with a flicker of recognition. "It's pouring," he said in a calm, low voice. He held out a large umbrella, sturdy, expensive. "Why are you still out here? Don't you have a home?" Lena blinked up at him. She was too tired to lie. "I don't have a home," she whispered. "No one left." The man paused. For a moment, it seemed like he'd walk away, but then he nodded slowly. "Come with me. You shouldn't freeze to death tonight." Before she could protest, he gently helped her to her feet and opened the car door. The warmth inside made her eyes sting. The apartment was on the top floor of Riverstone, a luxury high-rise that overlooked the city like it owned it. The moment Lena stepped inside, she froze. It was sleek, polished, cold, so perfect it felt like no one really lived there. "This is my place, Ethan Grant," he said simply. He handed her a loose gray t-shirt, soft, freshly laundered. "Showers down the hall," he said, his voice low. "You're freezing." Lena stepped into the bathroom, still trembling, holding the shirt to her chest. The hot water washed away her fatigue. When she came out, her hair still damp, Ethan was sitting on the sofa, flipping through documents. After a simple dinner of bread and hot tea, Lena sat on the edge of the sofa, her fingers trembling around the warm cup, seeking solace in its fleeting warmth. The warm light bathed the quiet living room in a gentle glow. She was still wearing the oversized t-shirt Ethan had given her, its hem brushing her knees, with the faint scent of clean fabric and warm water clinging to her skin. Ethan sat a few feet away, not too close but not distant enough to feel like a stranger. One leg rested on the coffee table as he flipped through a stack of papers. "What's your plan now?" he asked without looking up. Lena stared into her tea, then replied softly, "I don't know. I used to think I'd make something of myself, but everything disappeared so fast I couldn't catch up. Now, I'm just trying to make it through each day." Ethan paused for a moment. Then he looked up, his gray eyes meeting hers. "Have you worked before?" "I used to wait tables part-time during college. Then I worked in retail for a bit, but after my mom died, I quit everything." Ethan nodded slightly, as if confirming something in his mind. "I don't like strangers in my house, but I'm not the type to leave someone on the street either." He stood and walked toward the table. "If you want to stay, you'll have to work. Cleaning, laundry, keeping everything tidy. No pay, no complaints." Lena looked up, briefly surprised by the offer, but then she smiled. Genuinely, for the first time in days. Being a housekeeper in exchange for a place to sleep? Sounds fair. Ethan didn't respond. He simply nodded and returned to his seat, picking up his documents again. Lena pulled a light blanket around her shoulders and leaned her head against a couch pillow. Beneath the warm yellow light, for the first time in weeks, her heart stopped racing. The next morning, Lena woke up on the sofa, wrapped in the thin blanket. She stretched, her hair a mess over one side of her face, but her eyes looked less tired. Beside her on the table was a neatly folded note with precise handwriting. "Clean the kitchen before I get back. Don't make a mess. E.L. Lena chuckled softly. Well, someone takes being the boss seriously. The kitchen in Ethan's apartment was spotless, so clean it felt sterile. The rags, broom, and cleaner were all perfectly lined up, like they were there for decoration. Lena rolled up her sleeves and got to work, wiping every shelf, scrubbing every corner with strange dedication. She was someone who kept her word. If she agreed to be a housekeeper, she'd do it properly. But Lena was still Lena. As she began sweeping the floor, she started whistling. Then came singing, off-key, off-beat, but full of life. Oh, Mr. Boss, you're so cold, but I'll clean your castle made of gold. Her voice echoed through the apartment, bouncing off the pristine glass walls. That afternoon, when Ethan returned home, he paused in the doorway, frowning. What are you singing? Lena, wiping the dining table, looked up with a bright grin. I wrote it myself. Want me to add a verse about your 10 p.m. lights off rule? Ethan sighed and stepped into the living room. Don't make noise. I need silence to work. Oh, of course, Lena said sweetly, and then immediately started humming again, just loud enough for him to hear, not loud enough to complain. A few days later, while she was cleaning near Ethan's desk, Lena accidentally knocked over his coffee mug, spilling the contents all over his paperwork. Oh no, my hands are so slippery. You know how hard it is to clean coffee off papers? Ethan looked down at the soaked documents, eyes narrowing. You did that on purpose, didn't you? Me? No way, Lena replied, winking before walking off. He wouldn't admit it, but Ethan realized the apartment didn't feel as cold as before. The off-key singing, the ridiculous complaints, even the accidental coffee spills, all of it made the place feel more lived in. And worse, he started looking forward to it. One afternoon, while Ethan was out for a meeting, Lena took the chance to tidy up the living room. She dusted the shelves, organized the scattered papers, and then noticed a small wooden door tucked in the corner of the wall, old and slightly out of place in such a modern apartment. Curious, Lena crouched down. Her hand holding the rag froze as she reached for the handle. Surprisingly, it opened. Inside was a tiny, dusty room filled with old wooden boxes, small keepsakes, and a low table. On the table sat a worn, leather-bound notebook, its gold-edged cover faded with time. It looked like a journal. Lena opened it and flipped to the first page. March 15th. Clara Grant. She held her breath. Clara? That name sounded familiar. She turned a few more pages. The handwriting was delicate, the entries recounting a simple, kind life. Clara wrote about neighbors, about her strict older brother named Ethan, who was actually very kind underneath. But as the entries progressed, the writing grew weaker. Clara described her hospital days, her fatigue, and finally, an unfinished line. So tired today, but I'll get better. Lena closed the journal, her chest tightening. She looked around the small room, then gently placed the book back where it had been. Just then, the front door creaked open. Ethan was back. He froze when he saw Lena near the wooden door. What are you doing there? His voice dropped, cold and sharp. Lena stiffened, trying to keep her tone steady. I was just cleaning. The door was dusty, so I tried to open it. Ethan walked over quickly, his eyes scanning the journal, slightly out of place. He picked it up, his face darkening. You opened it? It wasn't a question, it was a fact. I'm sorry, Lena said softly. I didn't mean to. I was just curious, and the name Clara. Ethan turned away, clutching the book to his chest. I told you not to touch my things. He walked into his room and shut the door, this time harder than usual. Lena stood still. She didn't feel angry, only sad. Clara wasn't just a memory. She was a wound Ethan had buried deep, and Lena had unknowingly touched the most sacred part of him. 2 days after the incident with the journal, Lena remained silent. She never mentioned Clara again, nor asked any questions. Ethan, too, said nothing, but he wasn't cold like before. There was a quiet space between them, silent but not distant. Until one morning, when the doorbell rang. Lena opened it. Standing there was her uncle, the man who had kicked her out. He wore an expensive suit, holding a stack of documents and wearing a fake smile. "Lena, I'm just here to help," he said smoothly. "Sign these. Give up your claim to the estate, and I'll wire you a small amount, enough to live stable. No need to keep working as someone's maid." Lena gave a cold smile. "You really came all this way just to try and scam me again?" His eyes narrowed, smile fading. "Watch your mouth, girl." Ethan stepped out from his office, his gaze sharp. "This is a legal issue, and I have a lawyer." The uncle glanced at Ethan, his face darkening. "She's living with you illegally. I could press charges." "Go ahead and try," Ethan said flatly. After the man left, Lena clenched her fists, eyes blazing. "He's hiding the will. My mother left everything to me. I know it." Ethan nodded. "I'll call my lawyer. If you can get the original, we've got a case." The next day, Lena disguised herself as a delivery girl and slipped into her old home. Her uncle was out. She sneaked into the study and searched. In the bottom drawer, beneath layers of files, she found the real will, stamped and signed. Ethan sent the documents directly to his lawyer. 3 weeks later, in court, the truth came out. Lena won everything legally left by her mother: the house, bank accounts, and company shares. As they exited the courtroom, she looked at Ethan, eyes filled with gratitude. "I'll pay you back for everything." Ethan shrugged. "No need to double it, just cover what I spent." Lena stood at the door of the Riverstone apartment, holding the access card Ethan once gave her. She had won the lawsuit, reclaimed everything that was hers: money, a home, her dignity. And now she had no reason to stay here anymore. Ethan stood a few steps away, his expression calm as always. Lena extended the card back to him, her fingers brushing his. "I'm returning this. I'll be leaving." Ethan nodded. "Good luck." Just 2 words. No plea, no lingering luck. Lena smiled faintly, a sad curve of her lips. She turned, pulled her small suitcase, and stepped into the elevator. She didn't look back. The doors slid shut behind her. Inside the apartment, Ethan remained still, clutching the key card tightly. For the first time in years of solitude, he felt completely empty. A week passed since Lena had left. The Riverstone apartment returned to complete silence. No more off-key singing, no spilled coffee aroma, no familiar teasing voice. Ethan sat on the sofa, staring at an empty mug, the same one Lena had once accidentally knocked over his paperwork with. He said nothing, but his thoughts were in turmoil. He missed her. The next morning, he put on his coat, grabbed his car keys, and drove straight to Lena's old house, the one she now lived in after reclaiming her inheritance. She opened the door, surprised. "Ethan?" He stood there, his gray eyes deeper than ever. "I miss you," he said simply, but sincerely. "Not because you were the housekeeper, because I need you." Lena stayed silent for a moment, then let out a soft laugh. "The stingy man finally admits he misses someone?" Ethan stepped closer, never breaking eye contact. "I used to think silence was what I needed, but not when you're not there." He reached out his hand. "Come back to me. Not to work, just to be with me." Lena looked at him, eyes glistening. Then she placed her hand in his. "Only one condition," she said. "You still have to let me sing, even off-key." That night, after Lena returned to Riverstone, she stood quietly on the balcony, gazing at the city bathed in golden light. The night breeze played with her hair, and for a moment, she felt both close to this place and strangely far away. Ethan stepped out, carrying 2 cups of warm water. He handed one to her, then stood beside her in silence for a while. "The first time I saw you, do you know what I thought?" he said softly. Lena turned to him. His face, calm but different tonight, glowed faintly in the dim light. "There was something about you," he continued, "that reminded me of Clara, my sister, the only family I had left." Lena said nothing. She waited quietly. "My parents died in a car accident when Clara was just 2. I still remember her crying every night, not understanding why they weren't coming back." His voice trembled but remained steady. "I grew up being her brother, her parent, her everything. Clara was always smiling, always thinking of others. Then one day, the doctors said she had a rare illness. No cure." He looked out at the skyline. eyes distant. When she died, I didn't even get to say goodbye. Since then, I've been afraid of getting close to anyone, afraid to lose them too. Lena gently placed her hand over his. "Thank you for telling me," she whispered. "I know I'm not Clara, but I can be here as me, and if you want that, I won't leave." Ethan turned to look at her. In his eyes was no longer the guarded man she once met, but someone finally exhaling, because someone was listening, without judgment. And beneath the city lights, their hands found each other, not for the past, but for the present. Ever since the night they sat together on the balcony, things started to change, not with grand promises, but in the smallest ways. Lena no longer slept on the sofa. Ethan cleared out his bedroom. Now it was their room. She brought home floral pillows, a pale yellow blanket, some old photos, and a small bookshelf filled with dog-eared romance novels. The once cold apartment began to fill with her. In the kitchen, a jar of wildflowers sat beside the coffee tin. In the living room, her little fuzzy slippers lay next to his polished shoes. Even Ethan's sacred workspace had a new addition. A cup of hot tea Lena brought him every afternoon. They didn't label what they were, but it was clear. They lived together, shared breakfasts, lazy cleanups, inside jokes, and sometimes comfortable silences that felt just as warm. One crisp autumn evening, Ethan invited Lena to the rooftop. No roses, no fairy lights, just a small table, 2 cups of hot cocoa, and a sky full of stars. "Do you remember your first night here?" he asked. Lena smiled. "Rain, muddy shoes. A stranger lent me his shirt." Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled a small velvet box from his coat. Inside was a simple ring, set with a pale blue stone. Clara's eye color. "I once lost someone I loved, and I thought I'd live alone forever. But then you came, soaked, stubborn, and filled the emptiness." He looked straight into her eyes. "Lena, will you marry me? Not just stay, but stay for good?" Lena didn't cry. She smiled, as if the answer had always been waiting. "Yes, because this has been home all along." The wedding took place on an early spring day in a small garden by a quiet lake, not far from the city. It was a place Lena had once mentioned offhandedly, saying, "I'd want to marry somewhere with wind, sunlight, and water." Ethan had remembered. Under drooping willow trees, wooden chairs draped in linen sat in neat rows. String lights swayed in the breeze. Across the lake, the sunset painted soft orange ribbons over the water. Lena wore a simple white dress, her hair loosely braided, a bouquet of wildflowers in her hands. Ethan wore a slate gray suit with a sprig of lavender, Clara's favorite flower, pinned to his chest. There wasn't a crowd, just a few familiar faces: Jake, Mrs. Rosie, Lawyer Richard, and a few neighbors they had quietly helped over time. But the smiles were genuine, and so were the tears. Standing beneath a modest floral arch, Ethan took Lena's hands. His voice was low, but steady. "Clara was once the light in my life, but you turned that light into something real. You made me remember the past and believe in the future." Lena's eyes shimmered as she smiled through tears. "Thank you for not shutting the door. Thank you for letting me stay." As they shared their first kiss as husband and wife, the breeze brushed across the lake. The hanging lights swayed gently, playing a softer music than any orchestra ever could.